Good evening, I'm Lisa Lord, and in our top story, Barbados loses a former prime minister heralded as one of the island's economic greats.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
In our top story, Barbados has started 3 days of national mourning from today due to the death of former Prime Minister of Barbados, Professor the Right Honourable Owen Arthur. Professor Arthur passed away at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital at 26 minutes past midnight. He was Barbados' fifth and longest serving Prime Minister and represented the constituency of St. Peter for over 30 years. Now, Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley says Barbados is the poorer following the passing of Mr. Arthur. She delivered a tribute in a national address following his death early this morning. She admitted it was one of the few occasions in public life she was lost for words. As she reflected on their relationship, which spanned 32 years, Prime Minister Motley says the Owen Arthur she knew was never overwhelmed by the task at hand.
His intellect was larger than life, believe you me. His love of country as constant as the northern star. The last title bestowed on him was the most fitting, Professor of Practice. For Owen was first and foremost a teacher, taking the most complex economic issues and stripping them down to be understood by the average man and average woman in shop. His keen sense of history and of politics shared daily with an emerging class of politicians that he would claim responsibility for bringing to public life. As I said earlier, a man of his time and for the times in which he served. He discharged his duty as Prime Minister of Barbados and as a Caribbean leader with distinction. He shall remain in that pantheon of Caribbean leaders. On behalf of the government and the people of Barbados, we say thank you to Owen Seymour Arthur and to his family for his service to a grateful nation and to a proud people.
Prime Minister Motley says Professor Arthur never lost his thirst for public policy even after he left government, and his counsel, especially on the Barbadian economy, was rendered to all governments. In recent months, he served in a number of key areas, including a Jobs and Investment Advisory Council. The Prime Minister says arrangements for a state funeral will be attended to by MP for St. Peter Colin Jordan and the Cabinet Office. As she urged Barbadians to use the next 3 days as a period of mourning to reflect, she also reminded them this should be accompanied by the appropriate behavior and music in public spaces. The flag will be flown at half-mast until Professor Arthur is laid to rest. Well, Professor Owen Arthur will be remembered for his significant contribution to Barbados development as well as to CARICOM. Our Sharika Griffith examines some of his achievements.
As far as possible.
Professor the Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur was Barbados's fifth and longest-serving Prime Minister, having held the position from September 6, 1994 to January 15, 2008, a period of 13 years, 132 days. During that time, he led the Barbados Labour Party to victory in 3 consecutive general elections.
We must look to have a new form of governance in Barbados for the new millennium. I believe that our economic performance has been of a quality that will qualify us to look to the future to make further remarkable strides with the management of our economic affairs. I will look in a new term to absolutely revolutionize the social services of Barbados.
Born October 17, 1949, Professor Arthur was educated first at the Coleridge and Parry Boys School and Harrison College, and then the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill and Mona, where he earned a bachelor's degree in economics and history and a master's in economics. He worked in Jamaica after graduating before returning to Barbados and joining the Ministry of Finance and Planning in 1981. He was appointed to the Senate in 1983 and elected to the House of Assembly in 1984. In 1993, he was chosen to serve as opposition leader. Professor Arthur instituted economic reforms that cut unemployment from more than 20% in 1994 to just over 9% in 2000. His administration boosted the agricultural and tourism industries. In 1995, he was appointed a Privy Councillor, which grants the use of the title Right Honourable. Professor Arthur was a major champion for regional integration, and in 2006, he signed the agreement that brought the CARICOM single market into existence. Following his party's defeat at the polls in 2008, Professor Arthur stepped down as party leader, but remained Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. Peter, a seat he held for more than 3 decades. He subsequently returned to lead the BLP in 2010, but was replaced as party leader after the party lost the 2013 general election. In 2014, he gave up his BLP membership, but continued to represent the constituency of St. Peter until he resigned from active politics in February 2018.
As I leave, I give this House the assurance that I leave fulfilled, feeling that I have done my duty to my people as God has given me the light to see that duty. Farewell.
In November 2018, the former Prime Minister was conferred the title Professor of Practice by the University of the West Indies. Last year, he was contracted by government to chair a new global commission to examine several critical small island issues ahead of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD 15, which was slated for October but has been postponed. In January this year, he was named chairman of LIAT and also headed an 11-member Commonwealth Observer Group that monitored the March 2nd regional and general elections in Guyana. Prime Minister Arthur was hospitalized July 15th after complaining of feeling unwell. He leaves to mourn his wife Julie and daughters Leah and Sabrina. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Director of Public Affairs in the Prime Minister's office, Pat Paris, has added her voice to the list of people paying tribute to Professor Arthur. She recalls that in 2003, he appointed her to serve in the Senate. When he became opposition leader in 2010, Ms. Paris worked closely with him as his executive assistant. She says her fondest memories of him were the early morning calls during that time to check and plan his daily schedule.
During the time I worked with him, I could not be late, and as a result of this, I had to perfect my time management skills. He taught me to believe in myself and that I can be the best at what I wanted to do. He shared some of his political skills with me, and whenever we were confronted with a problem, he always said to me, "Let us face it and fix it." I am eternally grateful for the contribution he made to the development of Barbados and in my own development as well.
Leader of the opposition, Bishop Joseph Atherley, in paying tribute to former Prime Minister Owen Arthur, stressed that his death was a tremendous loss to this country and the region. Bishop Atherley noted that when Prime Minister Patterson of Jamaica left office, he expressed the view then that Mr. Patterson and Mr. Arthur both represented the last two in that class of political leadership. That leadership, he said, was driven by a political impulse derived from an ideology of nation building and development, which focused on the betterment of people. He said Professor Arthur was a visionary. His breadth of knowledge was remarkable and evidenced itself by him entering into varied and multiple fields of subject matter, particularly law. And in a statement, President of the Democratic Labour Party, Verla de Pisa, is extending condolences to the family of the former Prime Minister and to the entire country of Barbados on behalf of the party. She says that as the longest-serving leader who presided over a period of expansion for Barbados, Professor Arthur deserves a place rightfully alongside other noted nation builders. Mr. Pisa stated that despite being associated with party politics in the last 2 years, he freely offered advice and direction across the political divide. And joining us live now is Carl Boyce, a man who would have known Professor Arthur at the constituency level in St. Peter. Good evening to you, Mr. Boyce.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. And what are some of your fondest memories of the late Professor Arthur?
Some of my memories of Professor Arthur was that Arthur was a great leader, a great parliamentary representative. Mr. Arthur has transformed St. Peter from a village to a constituency that any person can be proud of, whether it's in Boscobel, Barbados, Diamond and Corner, Spikestone, St. Smith. It has been transformed both physically and in unit development. It's a great loss for the people of St. Peter.
And how are the people in St. Peter feeling this evening?
It is sad in St. Peter because Mr. Arthur, as we know him, was a great representative. He believes in people and people development. Mr. Arthur would come to us and he would roast breadfruit and he would eat with us and play dominoes, never let it get beat. For us, it is a personal loss in St. Peter because the people of St. Peter love him dearly.
And you worked with him for a number of years. What was it like working with him?
I had worked with Mr. Arthur for a number of years, both at the PRO of the branch and the parliament and the T-Rep for over 36 years. And it was a great enjoyment to work with Mr. Arthur. The skills, and he taught you everything that he can. He was a political animal when it comes to politics, but generally he loved people, and especially the working class, and he believed in human development, and he wanted to improve the law of St. Peter and the law of Barbados as a whole.
Mr. Boyce, thank you so much for speaking with us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, it is in Ben Hill, St. Peter, that the story of the late Prime Minister, Professor the Right Honourable Owen Arthur, all began. And as news of his passing spread in that district, which was his childhood home, residents spoke of his impact on their lives and the country in general.
Tears flowed, hugs passed, and many remain in disbelief as they learnt of the death of former Prime Minister and the former parliamentary representative for St. Peter, Professor the Right Honourable Owen Arthur. Family gathered at the childhood home in Ben Hill to support each other.
It has been a rough week since Owen went to the hospital, and we were all hoping and praying for the best for him, but God knows best, and he's gone home to be with his maker, my mother and the father and the rest of them. Only this year we lost another family member. It has been a very tough 3 years, losing so many family members back to back.
As a reflection of his impact, both the young and the old freely shared their memories of the political giant.
Owen Arthur is a good man. We will miss him very much.
I can tell that my mother and my father already, he did there for me, and we was always there for him. He's one of the best men you could ever find in this district. Despite all the critics, he's a legend in this area.
I say he's a good man. He did a lot for Boscobel, in my opinion. I can remember rolling with my twin brother, I rolled with he all through the campaign, making sure that we horse win. That was a very important horse, and he made sure he get every vote every house.
Well, I grew up around Owen, and we call him Uncle Owen. I know him as a good person, and he did a lot for our community. I was young at the time when he was Prime Minister, but he was really good to everybody in the neighborhood.
He was a very, very good leader, and he did the best he could, and I had loved him. That is the honest truth.
Well, I used to refer to Owen as Moses, because we actually grew up in Ben Hill together, and because of his leadership qualities, I said that he was one of the best that we had. Araba, Tom Adams, and Owen Arthur, those are my prime ministers. I love that man to a T. Owen, he's a great leader.
Owen was a very good man. He had the country.
Residents also spoke of his contribution to bringing social upgrades to the area.
That man was so nice. I can't express. Owen helped me a lot, the people that are here in St. Peter. And you know, he developed the areas and all of that there. You know, he put on toilet and bathroom for the people's houses and they make people comfortable.
Give us a good road and he gave us light because we didn't have nothing, and he opened up the way for us.
And like I said, when I heard about his death, I was very sorry because he was a very good man.
I must say that he did a lot for St. Peter when he was Prime Minister. The Ben Hill Road, he had to get cut down, and he did a lot for Barbados on the whole.
Owen, God bless you. You were great. You've done a lot for Barbados.
Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Barbados will move to reduce regional travel taxes this week. Prime Minister Mia Motley made the announcement during a CARICOM Impacts virtual security conference this afternoon. She says the country believes in an open skies approach as far as possible. Now, several regional leaders participated in that conference and agreed that regional travel must be carefully looked at as countries continue to struggle from the COVID-19 pandemic. Ms. Motley says Barbados is also in the midst of preparing new protocols for the cruise industry.
We recognize that to the extent that we can have some limited cruising from this winter onwards, we need to be able to have strong and residual protocols, but it is going to require cooperation between those home ports and those transit ports that will be facilitating the cruise. And that is because effectively, unless we create a bubble, you cannot guarantee that persons disembarking from ships are moving into a safe environment to re-embark to go to the next country.
Ms. Motley says it is understandable that once visitors are coming, there will be risks, but what is important is how those risks are managed.
You can't have tourists coming in to these countries, to St. Lucia, to Antigua, and to Barbados, to St. Vincent, to Grenada, and not at some point have some level of exposure. And part of the difficulty is, and the population is asking, well, why 72 hours before they tested to do the test? And the truth is, it is 72 hours, but even the 72 hours is not being met by the people coming on the plane, because as Governor Cuomo said to me very directly, that they don't even have the national labs being able to get back test results to people in under 6-7 days. So I think that all of us need to be particularly wary of what protocols we have in place for high-risk countries, because those protocols for high-risk countries determine what kind of exposure we are likely to have within the bubble.
Well, Barbados will not require any additional investment to accommodate people who accept the government's invitation to live and work here for a year under the Welcome Stamp program. That's according to expert on the future of work, Thakori Kagoro, who believes those in the tech industry will be the main participants of the initiative. She says such people will only require an internet connection and a room, amenities which already exist.
For Barbados specifically, no, there's no additional investment needed to attract the tech audience. I think like Donya said, tech will be the early adopters. Twitter announced that a lot of their employees don't have to come back to work, period. They can work from home in perpetuity. Square announced the same thing. A lot of other startups in the Valley have announced the same thing. And so if Barbados is looking to which audience or market will be the first to adopt, probably Silicon Valley is a good start, you know. Probably New York tech is a good start. Probably Nairobi tech is a good start. A lot of my friends here too have said, hey, next year I'm in Barbados. And so I think just the tech audience as a whole is really, really interesting, specifically because post-COVID, they don't necessarily have to return to a physical workspace.
An LGBTQ advocate and founder of Pink Coconuts, Donya Piggott, says the Welcome Stamp program will have a number of advantages, including a transfer of knowledge.
Once these skills come into our country, then we will be rubbing shoulders with these people, and these skills, there will be a transfer of skills. So I'm hoping that even the Ministry of Innovation and Technology can take advantage of these technical minds that will be coming into the country at the same time. So there will be a spillover effect in terms of the mesh of attitudes and behaviors, but Barbadians are generally a welcoming people, so I can see it flowing in quite easily.
Police are investigating the unnatural death of a mature woman whose unclad body was discovered just before 6 this morning. Lawmen responded to the area of Henry's Lane near the Old St. Gabriel School compound in Lower Collimer St. Michael after a caller made a report to Operations Control. Still to come, heavy rain prevents play on day 4 of the 3rd test between England and the West Indies. But before we get there, here is that tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
After a hurricane, report any disruptions to your utilities to the appropriate service providers. Cooperators General Insurance, helping you to be prepared this hurricane season.